Okay. This is a continuation of the dream and active imagination, which I was having this morning. And I've brought the active imagination part of it over here to the political psychology channel because it involves political psychology, as you will see. And so it naturally will be offensive to some of my depth psychology members, but nonetheless, it will be also instructive to those who come over here out of curiosity. So I hope that will be a useful thing. So I began this with a dream in Tokyo, and you can hear that dream over on the Carl Jung Depth Psychology Reading Group site. I'll leave the link to that dream underneath this description. So this was after that dream. I was considering, I wanted to know what would happen because in the dream, my little granddaughter survived an accident, and she got pulled back onto a bus, which I thought represented life. But I was getting off the bus, which suggested that maybe I was headed toward death. And so I wanted to know what was going to happen in this environment. And the bus had arrived at a train station in North Tokyo. And so I was off the bus. My little granddaughter had gone on within the bus, which represented life. And I was off the bus and I was going into this train station in North Tokyo. And so what I did was I placed myself back into the dream environment where I was being let off at this train station in North Tokyo. And so I'll begin from the beginning at the North train station. And so I re-entered the dream environment because I wanted to know what would happen next. So as I'm walking away from the bus, so this is a reading of the active imagination which followed. As I'm walking away from the bus, I wonder what that was all about. And I realized that it was about my new granddaughter and her precarious start in life. She was born 4.5 weeks early, and so is in the intensive care unit, but she's going to be fine. And my dream exactly predicted that because she got pulled back onto the bus, which represented life. But I also realized that because I'm at the North Station, I have been commuting since yesterday to someplace else. I get on the train and we're pulling out of Tokyo. All of the houses are black and white, very low to the ground. And I realize that the houses are gravestones. I see ahead a very large snow-covered mountain and an enormous tunnel through it. As we enter the tunnel, we are floating into the cosmos. The passengers are headed to their stars. I am headed to my star. Various groups get off the train at different stops until finally I am the last one on the train. I look down the car and all I see as residue of the others are sliced black olives about 12 inches in diameter about 18 inches in diameter and 6 inches deep. So they look like black inner tubes. The entire floor is covered with them. The train arrives at a very bright station, and I know that this is my star. The station is extremely highly illuminated. I am at peace with myself. I see two dark figures coming toward me on the platform. They are indistinct. I think one of them is Elijah and the other Salome from Dr. Jung's Red Book. I, where am I? Elijah, this is your star. Do you like it? I, it's very bright. What am I to do here? Elijah, nothing to do. This is your place in the universe. Make yourself comfortable. They turn and walk away from me on the platform. I try to follow. I have some questions. Elijah, ask them another day. I have goosebumps, very Jungian. Reference to the Messiah was in Netflix, where every person has a star. And so then I decide to go on. About 30 minutes later, the train leaves the station and I see two totally black figures, a man and a small girl, who seem to be coming toward me. But as my eyes adjust to the light, I realize that these shadows, while originally projected on a severe white wall, are coming closer and closer to me until they finally merge at my feet. Although the little girl is a distinct shadow on the wall, I see that she is part of my shadow at my feet. She tries to speak, but the dark shadow angrily pushes her to the ground and steps on the chain that I see extends from her neck to his hand. I look up in the light, reflected off me from the light of the station, and I have the shocking realization that the shadow has the features of Donald Trump. I am surprised and ashamed that my shadow looks like our 45th president. I see a pair of cutters lying on the floor of the platform. I grab them and cut the chain between the shadow and the little girl. Now freed, she stands to full height and separates herself from the shadow. She is a grown woman with honey golden hair and a broad smile, which she flashes in my direction. But she still merges with me at the feet. I recognize that she is my own feminine side. She immediately merges into me, and now I am face to face with the shadow. I notice that if I take a step backward, he diminishes in size, but if I take a step toward him, toward the wall, he becomes much larger and more menacing. But he is still connected to me at my feet, and I realize that as he is my shadow, I must face him. I start walking toward him, and he grows smaller and smaller until I realize that he is my size, and I am at the door at the end of the platform. I step through the door and find that the light is so bright from all sides that my shadow has disappeared. He has merged into me. I wonder, what now? An ex-cathedra voice booms out. Welcome to the afterlife. I step forward and realize I am in a fragrant garden. Another man dressed as a biblical prophet in bright white robes approaches me and says, I will be your guide. I say to him, I am surprised to find myself here, given that I made a pact with the devil during my lifetime. He laughs, but the devil did not keep his part of the bargain. You said he could have your immortal soul at death, provided none of your daughters thought you were going to hell during your lifetime. He reneged because one of your daughters did think that of you for a very long time. But does she still? Perhaps not. We shall have to check the records. Now come with me. At this point, I think that the active imagination ends, but it resumes. I see the heavy stone wall of the garden and a gate. My guide takes me through and disappears. I find I'm back in the bright white platform, and a train comes into the station from the other direction. The ex cathedra voice says, "Get on it. It is not your time yet. For now, you must commute, but you must go back now." The train departs, and I find I am passing through the tunnel and then the graveyard once more. Then I am back to the North Station, and I am looking out onto Tokyo once again. I reverse my path, complete with a new bus driver, and return to my room in central Tokyo. The next morning at breakfast, a Caucasian woman approaches my table. She takes my breath away because I realize she is the woman from my vision. She introduces herself as a reporter and says, without preliminaries, "I want to ask you something. Why?" Okay, and that's the end of that active imagination. Uh, the way it played out suggested to me that there may be more episodes to this active imagination in the coming days. So I urge you to come back and take a look, see if there's something new. And in the meantime, thank you for joining me. This has been a demonstration of my personal dream interpretation of my own dream, and that was done on the Carl Jung Depth Psychology reading group. And then I moved the dream over to an active imagination, which is what this video is about. And so this video contains my active imagination. Now, an active imagination is putting yourself back into a dream environment or putting yourself in a dream environment. It is not a fantasy. In other words, I didn't make this up. What I did was I wrote down what was happening to me in the dream environment. And so I simply recorded it, and I have no idea what may happen tomorrow or in a future active imagination. And I'm just as curious about that as you might be. And so just check back and see if this story goes on. It might very well. Dr. Jung's Red Book period went on for 5 years, and I have one experience where I had a active imagination experience that went for 8 months and turned into a novel. So we'll see whether there's another episode to play out at some date in the future. Thank you for joining me today.